Welcome to the Emisarios Unidos de Luz channel. If you enjoy this near-death experience story, consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. Now let's start with the story. I was swimming at the beach of the island resort I was holidaying at. Suddenly, one of the lifeguards patrolling the beach appeared in front of me as I was treading water, encouraging me to swim closer to shore to avoid being pulled further out by the rip tide. Heeding his warning, I turned and swam back towards the beach, which by then was quite a distance away. Suddenly a strong wind picked up, blowing against my efforts to make it back to shore. After several minutes of swimming against the tide, I had exhausted myself to the point where I could no longer tread water, and in my state of extreme fatigue, I could feel my body begin to sink. As I looked upward to keep my face from being submerged, I watched as an uncannily white light beamed downward as heaven opened in the sky above me. Above me, I saw members of my family gathered, extending their arms out to greet me as a choir of angels sang. As I received an outpouring of love from heaven, I felt wonderfully overjoyed and lifted in spirit by that love. Then in a vision, I saw my wife and daughter mourning my passing, and through that lucid dream, it was made known to me that if I didn't save myself, the lifeguard would die trying to save me. "You'd better start swimming a little harder," I heard a voice in my head say. Invigorated by heaven's energy, I turned my attention away from the heavenly light and started with all my vigor swimming back to shore. Even with the wind against me, I managed to make it back to shore, as did the lifeguard who was concerned for me. Exhausted, I collected my belongings and rode back to my room in the town to process all that happened earlier that afternoon. I left the island the next day and caught an earlier flight home, not wanting to be away from my wife and my daughter any longer. Story 2. My NDE occurred while I lay on the bed in the emergency room of the hospital. I remember suddenly levitating above my body and looking down at the nurses and doctors scattered in the scene beneath me. Suddenly, I noticed two men dressed in suits open a door that seemed to be floating in the air above me. As the most sublime and glorious light shone through the doorway, the men gestured for me to pass through the aperture, graciously explaining that it was a gateway or portal to heaven. Blissfully enraptured by the divine light, I desired to pass through the portal, knowing deep within that I could trust the two gentlemen. However, aware that my wife and daughter were on their way to the hospital, I communicated to the gentlemen that I wanted to say goodbye to them before passing through the doorway. The gentlemen then tipped their heads politely, turned, and walked through the door, and as they passed through the doorway, the door shut behind them. Suddenly, I was back in my body on the bed in the emergency room. "Jane, they wanted to take me to heaven, but I said not until I said goodbye to my girls," I explained to the nurse who stood next to my bed. "You tell them that you are not going to heaven, that you're staying here," she replied. "It's okay, they already left and shut the door. They are gone," I reassured. So that the listener may have a deeper understanding of what I observed during my NDE, I would like to offer the following discussion of the various aspects of my NDE. The light of heaven shines as if every star in the sky were gathered in a single place and magnified 1,000,000 times. During the NDE, the many colors that made up the light appeared pearlescent, like the inside of an oyster shell, yet incredibly brilliant. One absorbs the all-pervasive light with the senses of the spiritual body, not the physical one. When you remain focused on the light for some time, you realize it is the manifestation of pure love, a love that vibrates at a much higher level than what we can observe with our corporeal senses on earth. The music in heaven results from energy vibrating at very high frequencies and enlivens our spiritual body in a way similar to how music enlivens our physical body. The music of heaven is assimilated by the spiritual body through meditation, prayer, and harmonization with the oversoul. Your earthly relationships with your relatives are chosen by your higher self to facilitate your spiritual growth in each life. The white tunnel experienced by many who have had an NDE is actually the combination of all colors perceived as white light. If one were dying slowly, one might observe the tunnel as a great staircase rather than a tunnel, and one might even see a loved one taking every step with you towards the top of the staircase. In fact, if one were to slow down and take their time, they would see everyone. They would realize that they could connect with anyone they chose and understand them completely, including what made them who they were and the reasoning behind their decisions on earth. This allows each person to love and forgive others in the most profound way. As you progress up the staircase, you will be bathed in the white light of God to an increasingly greater degree. You will intuitively respond with your own white light, as naturally as you breathe on earth. The Lord guides you up each step, and you may briefly wonder why you ever stayed so long on earth. As you ascend, the souls you meet along the way will remind you of the good you did while on earth. These souls will be those you helped during your life. Some will have chosen to be there just to thank you, while others will be there to hold space for you. You are grateful and loving, and you understand that love is all around you and that you are love. You realize that the atmosphere is filled with the music of the surrounding white light, which is to say, the sound of the higher vibrations of energy emitted by all the beings around you. You understand that an angel's chorus is less about singing and more about their vibrations being at a level so high above what humans can sense that you have to be in the heavenly realm to hear it. You observe the music as wonderful, all-healing energy that flows through your body effortlessly. As you climb the staircase, you become more aware of leaving behind your physical life. You might be given the choice to continue your ascent or not. You may be shown how far you have progressed along the path towards heaven, or you might be returned to your life on earth. In my case, I was given the choice to ascend, but I was held back by the fear that the finality of death and the resulting loss of physical sensation would mean no longer being able to hug my loved ones, which I dearly love to do. It meant I would no longer be able to see in their eyes that my presence comforts them or do things to help them. I felt somewhat guilty about my decision to return to Earth, as one of the messages I received during the NDE was that I had important work to do on the other side and that choosing to stay on Earth was a selfish decision. I rationalized my decision by telling myself that love motivated my choice to stay, but in truth, both they and I know better. I also understand that one day I will no longer have the choice, I will simply continue to climb the stairs without stopping. Until that time comes, I intend to learn how to love more deeply and to purify myself both physically and spiritually in preparation for the day when I no longer get to choose. Since returning, I have come to better understand what I now refer to as the human condition. The human condition is what allows pornography and gambling to dominate the internet instead of charity. It is what makes us reach for a bottle of wine rather than a cup of green tea and drives us to act poorly even when we know better. It represents the inherent weakness or frailty of being human. Even if we have glimpsed the heavenly side through an NDE, we remain incapable of achieving the perfection we experience there on earth because our human bodies cannot fully express the realm of heaven. Our ability is constrained by the limitations of our mind and physical bodies. Finally, I want to share that love truly is all there is. All problems we face on earth are situations we are meant to solve with love. Even amid our fears, we are meant to address conflicts and challenges by finding loving solutions.